Coming up next on Locked On Devils. Oh my God, we got John Harper. Oh, wait, wrong team. Sorry, my bad.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What a night for Devils-Giants fans, that's for sure. The Devils win in overtime, 3-2 over the Seattle Kraken. Yet, Kraken, it was the first time they've ever gotten a point at the Prudential Center. Nico Hischier winning it in OT. We're going to break that down on today's show. JP Gambatese is going to join at some point. We're going to talk more about Tom Fitzgerald's presser and how things went down there. Once again, this is Locked On Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the world. My name is Zach Berman, and after everything that went down yesterday, the Devils still had a hockey game to play, and it wasn't necessarily the prettiest or cleanest game, but it was a game that, like I mentioned, with the quote-unquote amount of runway the Devils had, they had to win, and they did. They needed this one. Still a ways to go, but yet a ways to go that would not be the case if they had lost last night, especially when you have a team that is not as good as you in the building, given the hole that you are in right now. 2 points, absolutely mandatory. Oh well, you give them a loser point. You're not competing with Seattle for anything. So with that, JP is in. We're going to add him in a moment. 3, 2, 1. Dude, what's up?
Hey, how are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh. No, thank you for stopping by.
My pleasure.
I think this is the first time I've actually heard your voice in a setting other than that Twitter live stream. Yeah. I was
that one.
Yeah. I was driving home from you can see I was driving home from my minor league baseball job in Mankato, Minnesota. I was driving back to Jersey, and that kept me occupied for like an hour and a half on the road in Ohio. And there were multiple times where a certain someone said something I just wanted to drive off the interstate into it.
Yeah, no, that was probably one of the most brutal calls I think I've ever been on. It was rough.
Yeah, that was certainly rough. But before we get going, just how about for those who don't know you, just give a little bit of background, who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I run the Devil's Advocate Substack. It's a publication that I started almost a year ago. I previously worked with the hockey writers. I was on the same team that the beat reporter Daniel Amoya is on right now. And then I was also previously a scout for the NCAA for Dauber Hockey. You have probably seen some of my really, really, really long Twitter threads out there. That's kind of my bread and butter, is super, super in-depth stuff there.
Well, we're obviously lucky to have you as part of the community for sure. And lucky that I'm able to bring you on after a win, because those have been all too rare recently. And a game that was pretty low event, especially for a 3-2 game. Only Devils did outshoot the Kraken 26-17. But it never really felt like it was dominated by either side. This was a game that, despite it not being crazy high scoring, felt destined for overtime. And the big guns, the core, they have been under fire. And 3 of the guys that this team has tried to build around, and if they want to succeed, need to build around, combined for one of the prettiest goals the team has scored all season long. And it all starts with a play in his own end by Luke Hughes, which he's starting to get back to what we hope he would be. Not quite $9 million worth, but the points are coming back. Great play in his own end, finds his brother, and then Jack, the outlet to Nico, who's got a path to the net, beats Philip Grubauer on the backhand. And then after all of that, Philip Grubauer, for whatever reason, sees Dougie Hamilton and just shoves him? What was that about?
Yeah, that was a weird one. I mean, I'm sure, hockey players chirp each other all the time, so I'm sure Dougie said something. You could kind of see him like roll around more towards where Grubauer was in the hug line. So I don't know if he said something, but I thought that was honestly just hilarious. But you are completely right. It was probably one of the most boring games start to finish that we've watched, with exception to overtime. But it was a deserved 2 points. I think the Devils' defense did what they needed to do, even if their goaltender fought them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it was an encouraging sign, definitely a much needed 2 points after a win the other day against Minnesota.
And I think we're in agreement here that despite them beating Minnesota and then coming home and beating Seattle, we need to see them prove it against Carolina on Saturday. The Devils are going to have 2 days rest. Carolina is going to have Florida the night prior. Wouldn't be the first time this month the Devils would get Carolina on short rest. But then again, 2 weeks ago, Carolina had Florida. No, they had Colorado in their building.
Yep.
Lost, and then proceeded to lay an egg on home ice. So I think that brings us into what the main topic is. Tom Fitzgerald holds a presser, seemingly super duper last minute. I think you and I are on the same page about a lot of it. But in Tom Fitzgerald's quest to rebuild the 1996 Florida Panthers in Newark, New Jersey in 2025, there have been some decisions made that have led the team astray. What were your thoughts on just the way it went, what he said? And I don't like when you start a presser with, "Oh, I take full responsibility for this," and then you end it with that same statement, but spend 35 minutes in between doubling down on every bad decision you've made. That doesn't really sound like you're taking full responsibility. What, in your mind, has been the biggest issue with his shift towards this playoff style of hockey that whenever we see other teams go into this mindset, Pittsburgh after Tom Wilson, Rangers after Tom Wilson, it usually doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that I've been hammering home for at least a couple weeks now, where, you look at the 2022-23 team, and that team was special, just straight up. That was the most dynamic offense that the Devils have probably ever put together. The defense was limiting chances, even though the chances were high danger. They were limiting the number of them. It was just pedal to the metal, chokehold on the other team every night. And you never really felt like the Devils were out of the game, even if they were down. And, they won a grueling 7-game series against the Rangers. And then 2 days later, they're flying to Carolina, who has a week rest. And the Devils are a very inexperienced playoff team. So, it was kind of a perfect storm in the playoffs where the stigma around the team was that they were very small, they were very fast, but they were very small. So it was kind of a perfect storm there where the Devils were exhausted, inexperienced, and going against a playoff team that has been, through the gauntlet a couple times at that point, and, kind of just outclassed the Devils in 5 games. And the response to that from, the loudest people in the fan base and hockey pundits and even Tom Fitzgerald himself was, okay, well, Carolina manhandled us. Clearly, we're too soft to belong in the playoffs. And he kind of, saw a Carolina Hurricanes team that was playing dump and chase, and he saw a Florida Panthers team that was playing dump and chase. So what does he do? Well, let's turn this rush powerhouse team into a dump and chase team, because that's what had success in the season. And rather than building into the team strengths, and rather than, furthering the progress that rush-oriented, fast counterattack team had, he kind of counterbalanced it with a defense that was hard to play against, but can't move the puck. A bottom six that's hard to play against, but can't move the puck. And now you're left with a core that wants to play a certain way, and a defense and a system and a bottom six that wants to play a completely different way. And it's just not working.
I completely agree with you. And the one thing that bums me out the most is when the Devils, after the Carolina, that first run in 22-23, when they went out and they got Tyler Toffoli, the critique with Toffoli was, oh, he was too slow. He was not able to catch up to the team. I almost think that he would have been so perfect for what the Devils run or are attempting to run now. And even with those critiques, like, he was still putting up plenty of numbers. And the Devils never replaced him, and they traded him away in a really, really bad seller's market and haven't been able to replace him. And I think that's a huge part of the problem. But when I look back at the 22-23 Devils, and it's weird for me because I was living in the Midwest at the time. I got to see them play twice in person. One of those 2 times I got to see them play. No, I got to see them 3 times. The first time I got to see them play was right before Christmas in Florida. If you guys remember that game, that was the game where Matty Tkachuk went after Nico Hischier right at the end. But they came back from down 2-1 in the third, won the game. I saw them in Arizona that year, and then I saw them in Winnipeg that year. That's why I don't recommend going to Winnipeg. That's great building, not a fun trip, not a fun place to spend time. But you're right, they were just never out of it. And even though they've come back a few weeks ago in Columbus, and they've had games here and there, you kind of know when this team is out of a game. And yeah.
I mean, it's upsetting, right? Like, even in 2023-24, where the Devils didn't end up making the playoffs, you still watch them come back from multi-goal deficits, once or twice a week. Scoring was never the issue. And as far as Tyler Toffoli goes, I think you're spot on. And I think the misconception with Toffoli is, with speed, his foot speed is definitely below average, right? Like, he can't keep pace with Jack Hughes or Jesper Bratt just from a speed perspective. But as far as mental quickness goes, he was always understanding of the play, which was what made him so threatening with those guys, is that Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, in addition to playing at a very fast speed, think the game at a very fast speed as well. They process things, and they're steps ahead of the competition. And Tyler Toffoli fits that mold just as well as anyone else. He's a very smart player. And you're right, he was never replaced. And you're absolutely right that he would probably succeed a hell of a lot more than he is in San Jose here today in New Jersey.
It bums me out because he loved playing for the Devils. There were rumors that he would have loved to stay here. That never happened. And above all else, the one thing that really bothers me about the Carolina situation, how the Devils have never been able to get over the hump, is, yes, Carolina plays a system that is really fine-tuned for that roster, and the Canes are certainly deep. But it's not like the Devils are being constantly tramped by the class of the Eastern Conference. This is not a Hurricanes team that has even made the Stanley Cup final. That's not to say that they haven't gone out and tried to get that big fish. They went out and they got Jake Gensel. It didn't work. It went out and got Mikko Rantanen. It didn't work. There's such a misconception with Florida. And, they play physical. They big, mean, grit, sandpit. Florida can play that style because they run 4 lines. They're deep. You have dudes that are insanely skilled in the bottom 6. Guys like Etulo Sturinen, someone that I love. Anton Lundell. Look at this team that the Panthers are icing right now, where they are without 2 of their premier players. And the question was always, are they going to have enough depth to sustain them to get this far without Barkov and Tkachuk? And the answer is absolutely. But at the same time, the Devils are kind of feel like they're identity-less right now because you don't have the depth to play that way. Carolina, they don't have the high-end skill, but they have the depth. And if you want to play a rush-style offense, which is what the Devils probably should be basing their team around, Colorado, Dallas to an extent, you don't have the speed on the back end, and trying to move Dougie Hamilton goes completely against that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what you said about the Devils being without a true identity is kind of been my main focal point for the narratives that I've been pushing in my articles and on social media. I was talking to Mike Rupp last week about it, and it all does come down to the depth and the back end, where the Devils have 4 core players, 4 core forwards who should be playing a rush system. Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier. Those guys are built for the rush game. And, you look at the bottom 6 3 years ago, and who was there? There was Miles Wood, there was Mikey McLeod, there was Jesper Boquist, there was Curtis Lazar, there was Yegor Sharangovich. All of these guys are fast players who play with pace, they play with purpose, and they excelled in a rush system. And now there's Steph Nason, there's Luke Glendening, there's Andre Palat. These guys just don't belong in a system that is trying to play rush offense. And when you have, I think the bigger issue is, to be honest with you, on the back end. Because, again, you look at the team, the defense core 3 years ago, there are 5 defensemen who can move the puck. There's Dougie Hamilton, Damon Severson, John Marino, Ryan Graves, who wasn't superb at it, but he could definitely hit you with a stretch pass every now and then. And then there was Kevin Ball, who, while he wouldn't be able to do a stretch pass, was a very smooth skating defenseman and could kind of carry the puck in transition himself. And now you look at the same team, and there's Jonas Siegenthaler, Jonathan Kovacevic, Brendan Dillon. All 3 of those guys handle the puck like it's a grenade. And Brett Pesce, I think he's an okay puck mover, but he's kind of on the same level as, Ryan Graves to me in that standpoint. You have Luke Hughes and Simone Nemeth, who haven't taken a step forward as much as you want them to. And you have Dougie Hamilton, who isn't being deployed the right way. So you take all of that into account, and of course the Devils are going to have a terrible, horrible rush offense.
Yeah, there was one play by Nemeth yesterday in overtime where he gave the puck away. It was some weird bounce. Next thing you know, it's sitting right there for a Kraken player in front of the net. Jordan Eberle has it almost gifted to him. And I can't believe that it didn't end the game. I tweeted before overtime. I'm like, hey, Simone Nemeth has been a godsend in overtime. Let's see him be that guy. And he was almost that guy for the opposition, which I was like, oh my God, no.
Yeah, that was a tough play. It's honestly, I'm really high on Nemeth as a player.
Oh my.
Moving forward. Right now, he's got a lot of kinks in his game that he has to work out. I think a lot of it has to do with the way that he processes the defensive game. I don't think anyone's going to argue with what he's capable of in the offensive zone. But as far as reading, when to pinch, when to be aggressive in the neutral zone, he's got a long way to go. And yesterday in overtime, it wasn't necessarily an example of that, but you got to be more cautious behind your own net, especially in 3-on-3.
I completely agree. Now, before we return, we're going to take a quick break. Shout out some sponsors. Locked On Devils with JP Gambatese. I get it right? Did I look
Gambatese, close.
Gambatese. Just a little too much La Greca for my own good there. But yes, friendly reminder, today's episode is brought to you by a company Tom Fitzgerald should be using right now, and that is Indeed. If you're in need of looking for a job, Indeed is your friend. If you've ever hired someone who looks good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs. Put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs help you list and stand out to reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Indeed sponsored jobs are what to go for. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Need to fire somebody? Well, I don't think you go to Indeed for that. Hey, David Blitzer, you might want to go to Indeed for the next one. Yes. This is Locked On Devils, here with a good friend JP, and friendly reminder that the Everydayer Club is live. So if you haven't already, I'm launching a Discord. You can find me every day. It's probably going to be up and running soon, so be more than happy to stop by and check out the new Everydayer Discord. But there's been so much on this show, on Devils Twitter, everywhere you look, diagnosing of the problems that this organization is having. What about a cure? How do the Devils get out of this? And I don't really feel like I have much confidence in Tom Fitzgerald getting out of it after the presser yesterday, but say, hypothetically, he's visited by a genie in the middle of the night and decides to wake up and say, you know what? We need to go back to what was working in 22-23. We're going to fix the team and make it as it should be. Where do you start, and what is the roadmap back, to getting the Devils where they need to be?
Well, step one is you got to clear cap space, right? And right now, I think they have the wrong target. When you look at the back end, the team needs more puck movers. They don't need to subtract one. So I'm going to keep Dougie Hamilton put. But step one to me is getting Andre Palat off this team some way, somehow. The contract at the time was a mistake. To rectify it, let's ship him somewhere else. I don't really care if it costs a second-round draft pick to offload that contract. Got to clear space, and he should be the prime candidate. Past that, I honestly think there's less to do than meets the eye. Luke Glendening has no business being on an NHL roster. But past that, I feel like there are some good pieces in the bottom six. Cody Glass, I think, would be an excellent fourth liner. So with the new cap space that you acquire, maybe we go out and grab a Ryan O'Reilly or some miracle third line center that has some speed and is available.
How about a guy like Jared McCann even? Like, what is Seattle doing not selling? That's what I'm – there's a lot of mediocrity in the National Hockey League where, for whatever reason, these teams are choosing not to sell, and I don't understand that when the Kraken are so far removed from being good, even though they're in a playoff spot right now. So I guess that answers my question. But a team like St. Louis, why are they not selling? A team like Nashville, why are they not selling? And with everything being so close, I get it, but at the same time, it just creates a crazy, weird logjam. And the league right now is one big staring contest. And I attribute that to a very big lack of smart general managers. Like, I know Devils fans rip on Tom Fitzgerald for very valid reasons, but when you look at the amount of smart general managers in the National Hockey League, who really has one other than Carolina, Washington, Tampa, Vegas, Florida, Colorado, Dallas?
I mean, I think that's it, right? I think in the grand scheme of things, the NHL is a very boring league with very, very boring general managers.
Maybe San Jose. I like what they're doing.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I think San Jose is doing a good job, and honestly, I would even say that Anaheim is doing a decent job, all things considered. But yeah, man, it's brutal as far as teams that think that they're still in the race when they're really not. Nashville is a great example. St. Louis is a great example, although I think it came out recently that the GM basically said, like, well, we're going to be in a first-round matchup against Colorado, so we might as well sell because there's no way we're getting past the first round. The problem with St. Louis is that unless the Devils are going for, a Jordan Kyrou, I'm not really sure they have a lot to offer.
Right. Like, I'm worried that we're going to open up cap space. The next thing you know, Braden Shen's going to be on the way here. And then it's like, oh, let's replace Palat with another Palat. But he's won the Stanley Cup. He's got experience. It makes for a really precarious situation because, this whole summer was a staring contest. And the mindset was, everybody is keeping an eye on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's going to sell. Instead, Pittsburgh now is do you want to say overachieving? I mean, the job that Dan Muse is doing there is ridiculous. And it doesn't hurt in their case that Crosby's just ageless at this point.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's probably overachieving. Then again, they got some young pieces that are fitting in nicely with Ben Kendall, especially. I think he's going to turn into a heck of a player. But it is admittedly hard to sell when you have Sidney Crosby being an elite first-line guy for his entire career.
It is ridiculous to watch. There's some guys that you just watch and you're just like, how are they still playing at this level? Like, it almost reminds me of Derek Jeter, like towards the back end of his career. Like, this guy is not falling off. It is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable what he's doing. And I think Gino's having a bit of a resurgent season as well. But, getting back to, for a sec, other alternatives that the Devils could do, that would make a lot of sense. If you want to run Cody Glass as a third-line center, I think assuming that everyone stays healthy, I think that's a fine move. So the other alternative to me, once you clear cap space, is instead of going for a third-line center, maybe you target a high-end top six winger. I mentioned Jordan Kyrou a couple minutes ago. Yeah, I mean that's the perfect addition for Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, right? If say, because in this hypothetical, Dougie Hamilton's still on the team. Say now that St. Louis is looking at Simone Nemitz or Dawson Mercer. To me, the Devils should be a win now team, and I don't personally have a problem with moving off of Nemitz if Dougie Hamilton's still on the team. I know that might be a bit of a hot take, but the team's got to start winning. We're in the middle of the prime years of Jack Hughes' career, Jesper Bratt's career. there's really no excuse not to push all your chips in. And having a player like Jordan Kyrou, or, another spitballing idea is Philip Forsberg out of Nashville.
Oh my gosh.
Either one of those guys would be incredible. And that's where I would be completely fine mortgaging the future.
I just wish we could see a healthy Jack Hughes just go on a complete tear over the next few weeks. The schedule is really soft by NHL standards towards down the stretch. And we saw it a little bit last night because you could tell he's not 100%. But as the game went on yesterday, when you've watched Jack Hughes for long enough, he shows these flashes of like, oh, I'm about to just go nuclear. And you can tell that version of Jack is about to come out, which right before a Western Canada trip where they're playing softer competition should keep Devils fans, even regardless of Saturday's outcome, keep them in the mindset of, these games are probably going to be worth staying up for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, like you said, it's still kind of clear that he's not quite himself. He still has his hand wrapped up, and I don't think his shots are coming off of his stick particularly threateningly. But, you look at the statistics, and he's first on the team in shot attempts as far as forwards go yesterday. And that's exactly what you look for when you're talking about Jack returning to form, because it's something that we quite frankly haven't really seen much of yet, since he got back at least. And as a volume shooter that he is, it's a really encouraging sign. The same goes for Dougie Hamilton, who had 10 shot attempts yesterday. And when he's shooting, the Devils are at their best. On that same token, imagine how much better Jack Hughes would look if the third player on his line was a Jordan Kyrou or a Philip Forsberg or anyone other than Andre Palat, who has been awful on his wing, or Timo Meier, who's been so snake bitten that it doesn't really matter what he does.
I'd love to see them try Connor Brown in that spot. Like, we've seen Connor Brown on McDavid's wing, on Matthews's wing in the past, and he's been able to finish at a higher clip than I'm sure Timo is, which it breaks my heart because I am such a Timo truther. That's the one move that I will always defend. And, when he gets hot, he's one of the more fun players to watch, not just on the Devils, but out there. I'd love to see Connor Brown get thrown in that top spot. But with Jack, I think the analogy is, if you're a baseball guy, if you're watching a really, really, really strong player hit a bunch of warning track shots and he's running into contact and just not getting him over the fence, you're on the precipice of just like one of those runs from Jack. And please, God, man, just keep him away from the glasses.
Yeah, no, I think it's really obvious that, when he starts feeling his game, he starts losing the puck a little bit less. He fell a few times yesterday, which I'm sure made a lot of people giggle or, get really angry. But he tries a lot more with the puck when he's feeling better, because he knows that when he's at full health, he's capable of these things. He's capable of pulling a McDavid move every now and then and skating like butter through, 3 or 4 defensemen. I wouldn't mind seeing Grits pop up to the top 6 permanently. I feel like what he has to offer pretty well co-aligns with what Jack and Brett need. As far as board work goes, I think he's probably second best on the team beyond Nico Hischier. As far as kind of cannibalizing the puck, I think he's also probably the second best player on the team next to Nico Hischier. And he thinks fast enough to be able to be that third forward who can be the trigger man for those two guys, which ultimately is what they need. There are these intricate passing plays that Jack and Brett do together that just slice up the defense. And when it gets to the stick of someone who can't finish it, what good is the chance, right? Like it's not only is it infuriating because there are all these what ifs, but ultimately the results aren't there either.
It is absolutely maddening. And you're right. I'd love to see Grits in that spot. The only issue is when you have such little talent towards the back end of the forward core, then you're just turning the bottom six into grenade launchers on the fourth line. I really don't love that. So it's kind of rearranging the deck chairs until there's another move made. With that, I'm probably going to have to start wrapping things up just because bosses at Locked On like to keep these things to 30 minutes. But, oh my gosh, thank you so much for stopping by. Seriously, man.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Where can our viewers and listeners find you?
Yeah, so I'm obviously very active on Twitter, probably too much so, at JP_Gambatese. And then my Substack, it's called the Devil's Advocate Substack.
It's phenomenal. Subscribe to it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You can find that at njdadvocates.com.
Well, JP, it was a pleasure to have you aboard. This won't be the last time you're here. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, absolutely. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And friendly reminder, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL divisional round is here. FanDuel's officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, if you're a FanDuel user, you get a profit boost back waiting for you inside the app. Open your profit boost back first thing on game day. See what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts. Whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching, every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. We got John Harbaugh. We're going to be back here next year. What a moment. I think as a sports fan, second biggest and second favorite late night news bomb, rivaled by maybe only the Garrett Cole signing being dropped. But the Giants got John Harbaugh. If the Devils aren't back, maybe the Giants are. With that, thank you to JP for stopping by. This is Locked On Devils. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and fire Tom Fitzgerald. Have a great day.